Welcome. I'm going to show you how to grout your mosaic piece. So you've finished your mosaic piece, all the glue is dry. Before you start grouting, check you haven't got any loose tiles. You can tip it upside down. Check you haven't got any little loose bits of tiles, offcuts that have kind of slipped between the cracks as well. I like to remove any glue that's sitting on top of the tiles before I start grouting. You don't have to, you can do it afterwards, but I just find if you've got a large lump of glue and then you try and take it off after you've grouted, it can kind of mess up your grout level a little bit. So I like to do that beforehand. You can scrape it off, but sometimes I like to use a cotton wool bud and a bit of nail varnish remover and just take it off the top of those tiles. So you might want to put something down on your work surface for grouting. And then get all of your bits together. You're going to need something to put your grout in and something to mix your grout. You're going to need some water, and you're going to need something to scrape your grout. You can just use like a library card or like a gift voucher card. I actually prefer to use my hands the more I've been doing it. I feel that you can push it in better, especially when you're doing the mirror, because we need to run around the edge here, and you couldn't do that with a card. What you will find though, so I normally use like a light grey grout. If you were using black grout, you might end up with really black hands afterwards, so you'd probably want to wear some gloves if you were doing that with your hands. Okay, I'm going to show you how to mix the grout now. So mixing our grout. Your grout that you will receive to do your own grouting at home from me, don't put the whole lot in the pot, because if we put too much water in, we're going to then need to add a little bit more grout to thicken it back up again. So save yourself a little bit of grout to the side in case you need it. You'll have excess in your pack anyway. When you're pouring the grout, you're supposed to wear a mask. I use like these scooper things, and then it doesn't create a cloud of dust really. So that part's up to you. It doesn't take an awful lot of water to turn it. So have something that you're not going to accidentally pour tons of water into. So you want to start off with a bit of water, and it takes a bit of stirring really. And then when it does start to come together, it comes together quite quickly. So when you start to feel it changing, don't add any more water. So I probably added a fair amount of water in there. So it's starting to change already. So I'm just going to keep stirring. Ooh. So it's starting to bind together. Add a little bit more water. And this is the bit that I found the most trickiest when I first started to do mosaics, was getting the grout consistency right. And I think the wetter, the worst. So if you get it too wet, it's really difficult to work with. So you're much better to have it too dry and then just add tiny bits of water. And if you do get it too wet, then that's why you've got that little bit of reserved grout powder to put in as well. So I'm going to put a bit more in. So we're kind of aiming for a really thick mousse that sticks together. So at the moment it's thick, but it's a bit crumbly. A bit more water. It's a very boring video, this, watching me mix grout. Well, that's getting there now. I'm going to add a tiny bit more water. Right, that's lovely. So that's nice and thick, it's clumping together, it's not crumbly, and it's not soggy. We don't want soggy. We want it that consistency. Okay. So I'm ready to grout. Got the grout, got my mosaic piece. I've taken my rings off. I'm going to use my hands for this one. Like I said before, you can use a scraper, like a card, to get it in the gaps if you want to. So I'm taking some grout, see it's nice and thick, and I'm pushing into all these gaps. And it will look really messy for this part, and you'll feel like you're ruining your piece of art you spent hours working on, but trust me, it all comes together. You're wanting to really make sure that you've got all of these gaps pushed down into. Especially around your edges, it's easy to miss your edges. You'll find when you've done tiles lined up along the edge, it's actually easier to grout your edges when you've got that. Whereas if you've got like ragged edges, it's a little bit more tricky to get it looking neat. But I think part of the beauty of mosaic is the raggedness of it, really, when it's all uneven and, you know, doesn't need to be a completely smooth edge. But I think for the mirror, it works well having that smooth edge. And you definitely need it for your centre bit. So what you can do as well, if you're feeling like you're starting to run out, there's lots that you can scrape off the top and then spread that around. So your centre, I like to get a ball of grout and run a rim around. Obviously, if you're not doing the mirror, you don't need to do this bit. And also, if you keep that kind of grey shadow there, that will help blend in once we put our mirror, because there'll be a slight gap where the mirror goes. But just make sure you haven't got anything bulky that's going to stop your mirror sticking down. As long as you smooth out that edge and then get rid of any of these bits from the middle. Right, let me have a check. Make sure I haven't got any missing bits on my top before I start my edges. If you get little cracks as well. Look out for those where you haven't quite caught the grout all the way in. And I know I'm making a mess of my worktop. Actually, this worktop cleans up really well. When you dispose of your grout, don't wash it down the sink. You don't want to be putting like a concrete mix down your plumbing. This is great because you can just let it dry and then squash it and it all just comes out, and then you can pop the dried grout in the bin. Or you can use something that's disposable. You probably want to get the main bit of the grout off your hands with like baby wipes or kitchen towel before you give your hands a good wash. Okay, I'm happy with my top. Now I'm going to have a look at my edges. Now this might be a bit tricky to show you on the video, but there's not a lot to do around your edges. You just want to get a bit of grout on your hands and just skim that around, so that's making sure that's getting in all those little cracks around there. What you might find is with your hand on the top, you've then messed up your top grout, so just have a check of that once you've done all your edges. I won't make you watch me do this whole thing. So pretend I've done the whole rim. Double check your top. Okay, and then what I like to do, you can sponge it now, but I find it works better if I just leave it for say half an hour. The wetter your grout is, the longer you'll have to leave it. It will start to kind of haze over, and then we're going to sponge it and it's going to start revealing our lovely mosaic pattern underneath. So we shall come back for that in about half an hour's time.